What's up, guys? It's your boy Chrysalis here, and today we're going to be moving on to our next part in the series Road to the Oscars 2025, where if you haven't watched my last 6 videos, I'm covering every single movie that was nominated for Best Picture that came out in big 2024. And I've said it 1,000 times already, the ceremony is coming March the 2nd. I'm going to try to get all these done by then. I'm doing great so far, and hopefully it stays that way. So without further ado, we are going to commence with part 7. We are going to be covering The Substance. This is the latest film from French filmmaker Coralie Fargeat. I looked up how to pronounce it this time. Good on me. Previous to this, she was best known for a film called Revenge that had came out in 2017. I personally didn't watch it, but it received a lot of critical acclaim at the time, and it's sitting on Mubi, so I'll be watching that pretty soon. And if you guys want my thoughts on that movie, let me know in the comments. And while you're there, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. I know I'm very annoying about that, but the algorithm apparently likes it, so you know, it is what it is. And since then, there's kind of been a bit of a drought when it comes to her releases. She spent a lot of time writing and getting this movie together. At one point, they had wanted her to direct the Marvel movie Black Widow, but she turned it down because they told her that she wasn't going to get final cut privileges, which, I mean, good on her. It isn't to say that I thought Black Widow was a bad movie or anything, but I truly feel that if you're going to work diligently on a movie, you should get final say on what ends up being the theatrical cut, but that's just my opinion. So a lot of writing and a lot of thought went into this movie. Since, like I said, this film is following her 2017 release Revenge, it's now 2024. And it certainly paid off because this is one of 7 horror movies that were nominated for Best Picture, joining the ranks of The Exorcist, Silence of the Lambs, The Sixth Sense, Jaws, Black Swan, and Get Out. And to all those films' credit, it definitely shows a lot of multi-dimension in the horror genre. It isn't just, you know, big monster coming to chase you, or there's a spectral entity that's possessed someone or what have you. It's also just horror from psychological trauma. In the case of Substance, it's also society's perception of you taking a toll on your mental and physical health. And to reference one of the fellow Best Picture nominees, Black Swan, it's also the cost of what you are willing to do for perfection. Or rather, in the Substance case, in order to reignite something you have felt was lost, but was never lost to begin with, society had just told you it was no more once you hit a certain age as a woman. And I can go on and on and on about what this movie is, but what I definitely will tell you, this movie is fantastic. If you have not watched this movie, I'll just go ahead and say it right now. If you have not watched this movie yet, you are missing out on a essential piece of film that came out in the year 2024. One thing I will definitely point out immediately about this film is that it is not a dialogue-driven film. Much of the film's storytelling is done through its action, its sound, its visuals. So aside from, of course, the stellar acting from both Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, the cinematography for this movie proves to be the single most important aspect of it. Everything from like back alley shots, shots of the hallway in the house, especially in scenes where we have Elizabeth Sparkle's living room overlooked by a giant billboard that has her unintentional nemesis and antagonist Sue just looking straight at her. Also, the billboard, as well as the giant self-portrait of Elizabeth in the house, definitely has a lot of reminiscence of an Oscar Wilde book called The Picture of Dorian Gray. If you haven't read it, you definitely should, but a lot of themes that were in that book about youth and ugliness of the soul and everything, it definitely shows up and is subtly implemented well in this movie. Everything about the color coordination of the film and the lighting just does a fantastic job at presenting the visuals as the key storytelling device of the movie. Because like I said, there is, comparatively speaking, not a whole lot of dialogue in this film. I believe, if I remember correctly, the script, being about 146 pages long, only a fifth of it is dedicated to dialogue, which I feel is, needless to say, essential for something of the body horror genre. It isn't just necessarily just things like the violence in this movie, the transformation, or rather the birth of Sue, but also just small things like Randy Quaid, who's also solid in this film, eating shrimp, and just how food in general is treated throughout the movie. Especially in the part where Elizabeth is having her breakdown watching Sue on TV just living her best life while she's just a hermit making all this food. It's definitely just so unbelievably gruesome. The squishiness of the sounds, the way the food looks. It goes without saying that Coralie Fargeat does an excellent job weaponizing the genre that she is telling this story through. As this isn't just a tale about society making women feel bad for getting old, it also serves in a lot of ways, from what I understand, to be a lot of self-reflection from the filmmaker herself. Further exemplified by actress Demi Moore, who has in so many ways been in our protagonist's shoes, which by extension, vicariously, she has also more or less been in Coralie Fargeat's shoes. Everything from her dialogue that she delivers, all of her facial expressions, and especially the scene where she's supposed to be going out on this date, but the body dysmorphia she feels from the big-ass billboard that's just right outside of her house just throws all that in the dumpster. Her one aspect of hope and happiness just gone because of the internal conflict in herself, kind of placed on her by the industry. And Sue, as portrayed by Margaret Qualley, also more or less kind of a victim in this way, just not in the way that Elizabeth is. Sue's struggle comes from her own greater ambition, which she is immediately bought into by the industry. And she eats it all up to the point where she forgets that she and Elizabeth are supposed to be one, going so far as to turning the symbiotic relationship she's supposed to have with Elizabeth into a parasitic relationship, and then eventually killing her. And after the realization, not only is Elizabeth nothing without Sue, Sue is also nothing without Elizabeth, she finds herself trying to use the activator again, trying to make something better than her, even though she was the ideal version of Elizabeth, which I think is a poignant condemnation of, again, society and the industry. That constant gaslighting that no matter what you do, you will never be perfect and you will never be enough. A sentiment shared with a fellow horror Best Picture nominee, Black Swan. And if you have not watched Black Swan, I recommend it. I can't really think of anything negative to say about the film except for maybe some of the pacing isn't great. I know that the film is supposed to be super visual and action heavy as opposed to dialogue, but there's just quite a few moments in the film where I'm just like, all right, let's get this over with, please. I have seen Margaret Qualley's ass about 50 times now. Do I need to see it a 51st time? And I guess while I'm nitpicking, while the last 30 minutes of the film is fantastic, it does that thing that's kind of a writing sin, more or less, where it harkens back to dialogue that was said at the very beginning, as well as recently. It kind of does that thing where it's like, hey, you remember when they said this? Do you remember when they said that? Well, this is relevant. Pay attention. This is relevant. And not to say it's a bad thing, it just feels off to put in after just so much stellar writing got us to this point. But apart from that, yeah, I love the hell out of The Substance. As I said before, if you have not watched it for some reason, do yourself a favor and go watch it now. You can get a free week-long subscription to Mubi and watch it, as well as a few other movies as well. Coralie Fargeat took so much self-reflection, so much of the sins of the industry as it relates to women, and just turns it into this hard-hitting, gruesome film. And I just can't wait to see what she does next time. As well as, of course, to see which movies that Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore are going to be in the future. Even if the film isn't super preachy about the subject of sexism, as well as the subject of feminism, it kind of didn't need to be. The bleakness of the film speaks more volumes than trying to emphasize a message of hope. It isn't to say that the film says that there isn't any hope, because in a way, not only does it have like a message of hope in it, but also has a message of condemnation for Hollywood, as well as just society as a whole. And I'm just digging the hell out of it. This gets a free 2 thumbs up for me. As I've said 1,000 times already, if you have not watched The Substance, go watch it ASAP. I will say it is not an easy watch. It is not for the faint of heart, so viewer be warned there, but nevertheless, it's definitely an essential viewing. But if you've watched The Substance, what did you think of it? Did you love The Substance? Did you hate The Substance? Somewhere in the middle? Let me know in the comments below, and what do you think of all the themes and imagery and all that with the film? Let's have a discussion in the comments. As well as what you guys think of this video, I am more than open to constructive criticism. Just let me know down below. 3 more movies to go. Unless something changes, I believe our next film is going to be A Complete Unknown. So look forward to that video coming in the next few days, because I'm trying to get the rest of them out ASAP. This is your boy Chrysalis here, signing off.